Hello, my name's Niranjan, the host of Master of Your Crafts podcast. Learning from leaders who are continuously inspired, passionate, and driven to align with their soul purpose, sharing their gifts to bring healing to others. The music is composed by Rebecca Everett. Today is episode number 65, and I'll be talking to Sarah Poet, a bridge builder from old paradigm consciousness to new. She helps couples, female entrepreneurs, and businesses release their traumas and find their flow. She's a female masculine integration expert and senses the dysfunctions and solutions in any system. A former school principal and highly accomplished woman, she is also a modern mystic, having walked her own authentic path of feminine and masculine integration. Listen to her Sacred Remembering podcast and find her TEDx on inner feminine and masculine archetypes at sarahpoet.com. Hello and welcome to Sarah. How are you, Sarah?
I'm very good. How are you? It's great to meet you.
It's great to meet you too. I'm curious because you have such a depth of experiences and wisdom that you share on many platforms, from alchemy to healing to teaching to speaking. How did you get into this space?
Wonderful. Well, I followed the soul, as I say, and followed the intuition. So I had trained as an educator and a school principal, and then a school creator, and really enjoyed leadership, was really good at it, really loved the children, really loved innovation. And what I primarily talk and teach about is actually the journey of reclaiming the feminine and masculine archetypes within us. And so I would be driving to work, and especially this, like the last year and a half to 2 years of traditional work. And I was driving to my school principalship and driving home, and I was looking for any recording to listen to, like any podcast to listen to on the feminine and masculine archetypes. And I was just searching out this information and listening to audiobooks about the archetypes. And I just remember kind of looking out the car window one day as I was driving, and I was like, I don't know how it will happen, but I want to work in this space of feminine and masculine. And that's all I knew. Yeah. And it was not long after that the true intuition started to come in. You know, I heard that voice, whatever that voice is, like if it's your soul or a spirit or what, you know, whatever it is, said, well, your business is called Embodied Breath. And I was like, oh, well, thank you. That was very clear. You know, it was very clear. And, you know, didn't exactly know what that meant, but then it was a journey to really live into that name that I was given. And, you know, just many things like that just started to happen. And the unrest was like greater and greater all the time. And then I leapt.
And that was it. That was it. So
kind of. And then there were many, you know, tumultuous years after that. But yeah, that it was definitely something I was supposed to do. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you feel it defines who you are now?
That is such a great question. No. I mean, I guess in some ways, yes, in some ways, no. But one of the biggest things about transitioning out of a typical career that you work really hard to establish is that you don't know what words to use when
Right.
you start to create your own reality, so to speak. And so, it was like, well, am I a coach? I'm not really a coach because I'm also a mystic and I can do way more than ask coaching questions.
Right.
But am I a healer? Well, that's an interesting word. Do I
Mhm.
really identify with healer? Am I, what am I? And so I think on my website, I say that I'm a few different things,
Mhm.
like I'm a truth teller, I'm a teacher, I'm a mystic, I'm a medicine woman, and yet I'm Sarah Poet.
Mhm.
Like
Right.
all those things concerned, it's not the label, it is like who I have cultivated, this
Yes.
like a soul in this body.
Yes.
And, it's been a big walk of integrating the pieces of me that I, maybe left behind on that more traditional path or because of traumas, childhood traumas, adult
Mhm.
traumas. And yeah, coming back to what I say is like the truth of who I am as much as possible. And it's always happening. It's always an evolution. I
Yes.
mean, always. And so I'm sure this is true for many people listening, but the past few years have been just as much dismantling as
Mhm.
it has been, finding anything concrete.
Yes.
And so I think I'm always learning to become more comfortable, like surfing the unknown, so to speak.
Mm. Yes.
And knowing that things will change
Yeah.
because they already have. Who I was 4 and 5 years ago when I left that field is not who I am today. And it's
Right.
not, who I am today is not the woman that I know I'll be in another 5 years.
Mhm.
It's like, of course that core is there, but
Sure.
the journey is always continuing. Yeah.
What a beautiful transformation. And I think also the awareness of having the transformation, because we can go through lifetimes and not recognize that we're changing, we're transforming, and it doesn't mean a massive experience of shift becoming light in the dark all of a sudden. It could be just the smaller pieces and the smaller aspects of habits, behaviors, language, thinking, anything
Yeah.
can have such a greater influence that I think we don't take credit for as human beings.
Yeah, and to that, for anyone listening who's like, well, how do I know if there's more? Or I think that there's more, but how will I ever know, what it's going to look like? Like when I had that moment in the car of I just want to work in the feminine masculine. I did not know that that would come through as couples coaching. I didn't know that that would come through as like, dismantling what patriarchal business models have looked like and then recreating,
Yes.
myself, like, what does this look like to be in integrity with the feminine in business? What does it look like to be sustainable in our energy and not deplete resources in business? Like, I could not have seen that coming. But there's this
Mm.
evolution. And as I paid attention to what was nudging me, that always led to the idea for the creation or the social media post that like
Yes.
magically catches someone's
Just
attention
right.
or yeah, and it's not always easy to keep that faith, and I don't want to be
No.
like I don't want to be like totally magical thinking about that, because it's an incredible journey of learning trust and one that I'm still on. But I do know that the more I align to the truth of who I am and those pings, so to speak, those
Mhm.
like soul nudges, those intuitions, the
Mhm.
gut feelings, um, the more flow I will experience,
Yeah.
which is a major trust walk for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a very courageous one to recognize and observe and feel that fear and do it anyway. And I know that's a catchphrase slogan that's been out there for eons probably, but it's truth. You got to step into a place of the unknown.
It is truth. And I also really want to normalize, for anyone who's listening to my experience here on this interview, I don't always have courage.
Right.
I definitely, I have had really big periods of time where I was questioning, well, will this work? Or, what does it look like? And actually just this morning, we're recording this mid-June, and I just this morning put out a post about courage because I was just recently really challenged and tried in my own kind of decision making, and like, am I going to stay on this path of trusting? And so there's like an invitation into, as they say, next level, and that crossing that bridge in the past, few months has been not fun. Not fun. And I could look for every single escape route, to like, well, maybe I'll just get a job because a W-2 would be really nice for my son and I, like bring on the stability. I'm so ready for the stability. And then just, trying it out and looking for those, like I said, kind of escape routes, like, is there going to be something magical over here? Or what's going to happen over there? And then it's like, Sarah, this is just your process. Like, what do you want? So I actually applied for a great job, like a really great job with an organization that I really like. And I was like, you know what? I can do both. Like, I can do what I do and just like really exhale with, the stability of a job that I can get behind. And it's funny that, who admits this? Because we have this culture of like, everything's rosy in this entrepreneurial path. Right. No, it's hard. Right. And I really want to, just normalize that. And so when I applied for this position, I really genuinely like put up a prayer, so to speak, like, okay, source, consciousness, universe, God, whatever you call it. If this is the path, like if I am meant to do this for stability for my family, then let it happen. Because it was like a really, it felt okay. It wasn't like one of those things that you're like, oh, I don't want to do it, but I'm doing it. It was like, okay, if this is really what I'm meant to do, show me the way. And if not, then like, help me become who I am really meant to be, to steward this, mission that I feel like I've been given. And I did not get the job. I did not get the job. I just found out. It was kind of funny side note. I said the same prayer last year. I kind of heard Spirit say, when the dog comes, just say yes. Like this puppy was like going to come into our lives. And my son kept asking for a puppy, the little, he can like, sometimes he's like, I know a puppy's coming. And I was like, I don't think a puppy's coming. And I heard the voice say, when the puppy comes, just say yes. And it was 9 months later, like on Mother's Day weekend of 2021, I heard the voice say, puppy's here, get on Pet Finder. And I opened, I know, very clear, right? Unmistakable. And I get on Pet Finder and there she was. And I knew it was her because she very much looked like my last dog. And I said in that moment, I was like, okay, Spirit, if this is our dog, give us green lights. And if this is not our dog, give us red lights. And I'm not kidding you, green, like 5 consecutive green lights. I mean, I did not want to take home a puppy into this apartment complex. It was like, really? But there were all green lights. And so that same, faith, prayer, whatever you call it, it was like, if I am meant to do something different,
Right.
for a while or in tandem with this. Like if this is too much pressure on I have a teenage son, and I want to be really fully present in these middle school, high school years.
Yes.
And so it was like, you know what, if I need to put this vision on hold, then I will, like for him. Right. And yeah, so it looks like I didn't need the job. Apparently, here we go. Next step.
You didn't. You didn't.
Yeah.
So from that, can you identify what your calling is?
Oh, I think, that's really funny to admit. Identify what my calling is. So my calling is, I don't know, there's like calling, there's purpose. And I think the purpose feels big, but maybe I'll, the calling, I have a calling to serve, which was very different than the initial reasons that I stepped into entrepreneurship. I had all this gusto about owning truth and speaking truth, and just so much to prove, really. Right. Like I had, I was taking a really big leap, and I was like, by goodness, I am going to do this, and and so that has really matured, washed out. I've been humbled enough times that it's like, well, that's not it, right? That's not it. And so I have callings aplenty. And one is really ultimately about envisioning, like, what does unity consciousness and what does it look like if we really truly begin to heal a separation paradigm? So patriarchal culture was really built in separation. Somebody had power, somebody didn't have power. And so, what happens when we begin to heal those dynamics, in us, in our love relationships, in our workplaces, in our systems, our organizations. So that's really, I'm here to be a bridge builder, and I've known that for a long time. And then, maybe that's complete enough. Well, I get the other like major one, actually, I'll keep going. I used to have this sticky note that I was so fired up one day. I was in like a women's mastermind of local women, like really all doing big, amazing things. And we were all like struggling with imposter syndrome, struggling with resources, finances, like how in the world are we going to make these businesses go? And I wrote on a sticky note, resources in the hands of women. Like that was my why. Like I want resources in the hands of women, because we know that so much changes when women are empowered, with their resources. And then that really opened up a lot of learning and some unique teachings that ended up coming through me around, as women looking at our inner resources first and foremost as the most valuable things that we have.
Always. Yeah.
So our time, our attention, our body, our life force. And when women know how valuable that is, then we stop giving it away in a power paradigm, right? We're like, no, this is my sovereignty that we're talking about here. And so that's another really, really big calling that I have, is about women and prosperity, and specifically women who are looking to do it differently. Right. Like our bridge builders, our new paradigm thinkers, those integrating both feminine and masculine. What does that new paradigm look like? And how can that be prosperous? Because our money system was built inside of that separation and power over paradigm. And so like someone had to be exploited in order for another person to have money.
Right.
And so what does it look like when we do not participate in those energetics, ethically, as entrepreneurs, as businesses? And that's a totally new thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a very big shift. in not only thinking, but embodying it, really being.
Oh my gosh, it has required incredible dismantling inside of, my mind, my body, my system, my ways of being, my ways of interacting with money.
Yeah.
Moving from like a fear of scarcity that was really perpetual through my entire life.
Mm.
And that led to, patterns of overconsumption.
Right. Right.
And this is really fascinating to look at, like, well, oh, okay, so you're afraid of not having resources, but your own patterning is about consuming more. So we're in
That's right.
these cycles of, I don't have enough, okay, I get some, and then I spend it and I deplete it, and so, just not sustainable, just
Right.
not sustainable. So really having to, again, like, dismantle that inside of my own lived experience. And a really big like teaching came through for me. I've called it Heartland.
Nice.
And so it's like an esoteric transmission, as well as a teaching of how we as women dismantle that patriarchal pressure to consume and have more and really, really be productive in order to get our needs met and sacrifice our energy and things like that. And then coming into, what does prosperity look like when we run sustainable energy?
Yeah.
And when we're really focusing on the heart and integrity and union.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. With all those, with that beautiful triad, what do you believe are some of the attributes that connects you to that triad, but also to that bigger purpose of Sarah Poet?
I don't know if this is exactly what you're meaning, but the answer that's popping for me is like my own relationship with my own soul. And so in the past few years, I started to talk more and more about sovereignty. And when we're talking about our resources being our own, our energy, our life force being our own.
Yeah.
And when we reconnect to source consciousness.
Yes.
Right? Like the sacred, like when we go to that. And what I mean by that, for anyone listening who that's like, oh, what does that mean? We've had all of these like religions, structures, educational systems that told us that we were, not our own authority. And that we didn't have a direct connection to source consciousness.
Right.
And so when we decide that, oh my gosh, I'm going to reconnect to my source consciousness because I am of source.
That's right.
There are, literal energetic architecture that connects us to source that we can reclaim. Yeah. Yes. We're like talking the same language here. I can tell you're like, yes.
Yeah.
And so, when I started to do that was when more energy came through and more ways of thinking and seeing and being, like, ancient mystical technologies that nobody ever taught me started to kind of come through. And I'd be in a client session and I'd be shown like, actually we can heal by reconnecting this and that, or, I would be shown like the light grid architecture. Nobody ever taught me that. It was just like coming back through me because I had decided to connect to my own soul.
That's right. Yeah.
And so, when you ask what the through line is, it's like that, or just that I'm serving exactly what I am called to serve, rather than trying to fit into something that somebody else created, or trying to use like popular language. Like, it really is super authentic, and the through lines of feminine and masculine. And I think this is like a ping, when we're starting to wake up to it really is this bridge to unity. But we start to wake up to, oh my gosh, I suppressed my feminine. I have a TEDx at sarahpoet.com where I like tell my story of what that looked like as a modern woman, and many women identify with that story.
Absolutely.
And I specifically told it like archetypally, so that women could see themselves in it. And so we get these nudges like, oh, I'm kind of inspired to like look into this thing called the feminine, or to like reclaim my intuition, or, it could be true that there were like traumas or experiences that were suppressed that like come knocking. And then those spiritual awakenings can kind of feel like a fire hose to the face, and you're like, why can't I push this down anymore?
Right. Yes.
And I think that's ultimately the way I would describe that, is the soul's quest to become like everything you're meant to be in this lifetime. And all that you was, and all that you are to be, coming into this beautiful union. Oh, beautiful.
Because we have access to everything.
Right. And I had mentioned the way my business name had come in, embodied breath. And, part of that, learning what that meant, right? Because it was way bigger than I knew when it was given to me. And we're living in a time, and it has to do with that source connection, like going back to source, where we're bringing the spirituality and the consciousness of, these future timelines and ascension, if those are words that, your listeners are familiar with, we're bringing that down into the body. And so, it's really like the spiritualization of matter itself, like in ascension, right? Like before there was this ascension, like everything was supposed to happen up, 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 up. Like, you had to get to heaven, you had to like, connect with spirit, up, 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 up. But here we're saying like, in this now moment, I am in a human body. And so I'm going to bring the entirety of my experience into this human body. Like calling all parts of myself to myself. Absolutely. From throughout, like, all timelines, all dimensions, all realities, like bringing myself to myself. And it's just such a powerful journey when we start to reclaim things like that.
Absolutely. Which is also a beautiful shift for the timeline and the specific happenings on this planet, because I don't know about you, but I remember going into meditations and leaving my body, because that's all we could do to a certain degree, because the energy on the planet was so dense and so heavy. You had to leave to witness an experience and then come back. Whereas now it's the reversal of, we're here and we're bringing it in.
Yes, right. And really anchoring new frequencies, because if you just feel into it, like separation cannot exist in the same frequency as unity. They're two totally different frequencies. Absolutely. And so, and this was what my post this morning was about, actually, was like, that courage that's required to do this work, or to do the leaping, to become, it's like the pioneers of what's coming. Like, we are really the pioneers of what's coming, because we're going into the intuition, into the unconscious, into our sacred knowing, and bringing forward really the truths and the ways and the wisdom that's going to lead us forward. And that is anchoring the new earth frequency. And I'm saying, I know it's hard. Like, I know it's hard. You're saying like, well, here I have these solutions for a future earth, and would you like to, purchase them and help me make a living? And, and people are like, but right now the
Yes.
world is in crisis, and right
Right.
now I have to keep this job because I don't know what's coming next. And it's like,
Sure.
oh my gosh, yes. And, we have to be stretching ourselves
Mhm.
into the new and bringing it in,
Yeah,
or else we stay in the old. Like,
that's
who else
right.
is going to do it?
That's
Right?
right.
Who
Yeah,
else is going to do it?
it is.
Yeah.
It is. It is a lot of courage and it is a lot of strength, but a lot of trusting. Because what I'm hearing from you is leaning into that trust and leaning into that courage. But it can be a little bit daunting at the same time,
Mhm.
right?
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Like I said, like I literally was looking for like, okay, what's my out? What's my out? Like, what's
That's
my
right.
escape route?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was doing that for a couple months. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Oh, wait. My escape route out of this discomfort is actually further alignment with the truth of who I am.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right? Like
Absolutely.
that is the only way through. And I think
Yeah.
so much suffering comes from um, just like wanting to stay, or like wanting to stay in a job or wanting to
Sure.
stay,
Yeah.
in a relationship because it's like, well, at least this is kind of working.
Yeah. It's familiar. It's
Yeah.
okay. It gives me a label to fit in with society and community.
Yeah. But do you know what? Yeah, we talked about labels earlier too, and the process of letting go of like, a traditional label.
Mhm.
And, on my website, people could read the about page and see what I've done and what my certifications are and things like that.
Mhm.
No one who has ever bought anything from me via a
Yes.
consultation has
Yeah.
asked
Yes.
about my previous history.
Right.
No one, because it's really a matter of resonance.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Like
right.
someone might hear this and they're like, oh my gosh, that's where I need to go next.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's kind of like how we find our soul family.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And it's a different way of trusting and interacting also as like I mean between all of us, right? Because I'm choosing not to use the labels,
Mhm.
and I'm also trusting my
Yeah.
clients to trust the resonance that they feel.
That's right.
And if they can't do that, then it's just they're not going to approach me
That's right.
because that's like the frequency
That's
of
right.
what I'm offering.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of trust that we need to have in what does align.
Mhm.
And I am speaking to this because we have a lot of people transitioning out of the traditional workplace right now and into entrepreneurship or spiritual entrepreneurship. And if I can save anyone any hassle by mentioning this, I spent a lot of money in the beginning on coaches that I thought I should spend money on.
Right.
Because they had like a really impressive sales funnel, or they were telling me like, this is how you do it.
Yes.
And I really tried a lot of different things, from like, the spiritual business coach to
Mhm.
the more traditional online business coach to, another coach. And it's like, well, no one has the be all end all anyway.
Right. Yep.
And also it was like my soul that needed to forge my path.
Right.
And that's the recipe. Like
Yeah.
no one else has your recipe.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. But leaning into those who can support you or at least hold space is crucial.
Yes.
And that's where the resonance piece, I truly believe, comes in. It's not the credentials, it's not the pieces of paper. I've oscillated with that myself personally for many years. And, probably over the last 5-6 years, dropped it off the table. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. And we definitely need each other. We definitely need each other.
Absolutely.
I was recently kind of interviewed for this like solo entrepreneur, magazine or whatever. And I was like, the message of always going it alone
Yeah.
is very old school. It's very separation paradigm. And so
That's right.
like I'll do this interview, but I'll also talk about how we need each other and we need
Absolutely.
collectives. And, that's why I have the Sacred Remembering membership. I built that after I built my podcast, because it was like, we're women who are remembering who we are, and we need to be able to talk about that with other women. And
Yes.
so it really is the resonance that I would say should create those decisions, versus the should or have to, or, ooh, this
Right.
person's, saying that they can get me the biggest profit. And so I have to invest in them first for,
Right.
huge sums of money and that kind of thing. So yes, we need each other. And I found that it's often a little bit of a hard lesson
It
when,
is.
when that resonance really isn't there to begin with.
That's right. That's the hard part. Absolutely, it is. It is, for sure. You've done a lot. There's been a lot of transformations. There's been a lot of coming and going and learning and all those pieces in between. So my big question, what's next? What's for the rest of the year? What's coming down the pipes for you, so to speak?
Beautiful. Yes. So right now I'm really learning a lot about human design.
I see.
And I'm a human design projector.
Yes.
And so what I love about human design is that it helps you to understand how you should use your energy for the greatest optimization.
Absolutely.
And so that has really helped me to begin to answer some of these questions, because as an entrepreneur, there's a pressure to always be generating something. And what I'm doing right now is going a little bit slower, but really listening to the intuitions. And so there's been a class and a concept called masculine feminine money that has been just knocking at my door for almost a year. And I'm finally listening. I would say that's what I'm doing first. Is like, I'm finally listening to some things that have been there and waiting for my attention. And so I am having fun with it. I'm doing a little class next week on it. And then I believe that will probably launch into, just a 4 or a 6 week live class where I'm taking primarily women through money archetypes in order to come to wholeness and prosperity. And then that will be a course that lives on my website, so it's like, I'm beginning to, do less, but also like really wisely use the energy to make these like core offerings available to more people, but not necessarily exhausting myself. And then the other idea that's really coming through is called Sustain. And I have done this as a private mentorship for spiritual business owners, female entrepreneurs, in like the 0 through 3 year process. Like if you're somewhere in that beginning stage, this is for you. And so it's like very practical, very, it's the masculine and the feminine of like what this, potential new paradigm of business and really sustaining in our resources, as I talked about earlier, as women, what that would look like. And I'm excited about that one because I love this topic. And also because I think I'm going to launch it with a new pricing model that like just feels really in integrity with me. And I have never seen anybody do where it's like the more collective investment, the lower the price for every woman. And so I'm not, I think that there's just so much distortion in the pricing of coaching. And I want to make a living and impact as many people as possible that want to hear my message. And, I, right now anyway, am very interested in like, what does sustainability look like? What does regenerative energy look like? And very much not interested in the common coaching pricing, phenomenon that's like, how much can I get out of this person?
Right.
And so it's like, well, if I know that I need, for this amount of work over this many months, if I know that I need, let's say $20,000, then, if 4 women join, then it's $5,000 a piece. But if 10 women join, it's $2,000. Right. And then we get all of that, like women's masterminding, all of that community. Yeah, exactly. And so I'm still listening for all of the instructions on that, but it is really something that I just need to like go for at this point and trust. Right.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. It sounds like it. It sounds like it's all there. It's just ready for you to just 2 feet in and let's go.
Yes. Right. Yeah. I'm also working on a book draft of Heartland, the concept that I mentioned. And it's so, we're living all of our own lessons here and then bringing them forward. Right. Because I'm how many days do I wake up and put Heartland, this creative project, like first? Well, very few. And then I'll like go into, well, what do I need to do today or produce today or something like that. And then like, I don't do the creative thing. I don't do the book draft. So I'm always working on walking my own talk about where we put our energy in terms of our priorities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's huge. It's a big balancing act. It's the ebb and flow of, as you put it yourself, the masculine and the feminine energy, and really being congruent of it.
Yes. Right.
Beautiful. Yep. I love it. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Sharing all your experiences, all the insight and your forward journey as well, because as individuals, we can get pegged or marked with a certain title or labels or an imagery, but not recognizing for many out there that there's a transition for each of us. And thank you for sharing your story and taking us on that journey of your evolution as we all go through one too. So
yes, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. And I think that the transformation is ongoing.
Always.
Which is really, sometimes uncomfortable and inconvenient. Like we'd like to relax a minute, but really, I've been making peace with that. It really is continual. So.
It is. It's showtime. That's what I feel.
Always.
Energetically, it's showtime.
It is.
Time to go.
Beautiful. Yes. Beautiful. Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you so much. Listeners spending their time and energy listening. This is great.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm Naranjan, and you've been listening to Master of Your Crafts podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and join me next week for another episode. Thank you for listening. Hello, my name's Naranjan, the host of Master of Your Crafts podcast. Learning from leaders who are continuously inspired, passionate, and driven to align with their soul purpose, sharing their gifts to bring healing to others. The music is composed by Rebecca Everett. Hello and welcome back. I'm excited to be back and share with you a host of interviewees that I've had the pleasure of speaking with and connecting with and learning about their gifts that they share as we evolve as a world and as planet. And as a humanity, as a race, how we move through the world with these current changes. To kick off my season 3, we have Shell Roth. As a seasoned speaker, an author, and a social media entrepreneur, Shell has helped hundreds of organizations transform all perceptions about business leadership, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Companies and individuals alike trust Shell to simplify solutions for seamlessly complicated challenges and incorporate those solutions into action. With 2 decades of training businesses on the power of social media marketing, Shell now trains companies on gender inclusive practices, as well as encouraging understanding of gender non-conforming folks and implementing the use of gender inclusive language. Shell inspires audiences while offering strategies to impact results. All proceeds from Shell's DEI training engagements and book sales go to the Association of Family and Community Integrity, a not-for-profit in Houston, Texas, supporting education and LGBTQI and homeless youth. So hello and welcome to Shell. How are you today, Shell?
I'm doing just fine. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
I'm excited to have you here today and to delve into a conversation about you, your history, and some of the obstacles and challenges that you've faced in this beautiful lifetime that we are experiencing. More about the gender inclusivity and that path and that journey that it's taken you on of identity to a certain degree. And what does that look like for you? I know that's a real loaded question. So I'm going to go with, what is it you believe about yourself now? And do you feel to a certain degree it defines maybe you or aspects of yourself?
Yeah, so that's a huge question. And since I've been walking this earthly plane for quite some time, I guess I'll start with now versus going back. And finally, as of 2 years ago, I finally came out as a transgender person, a non-binary person. And let me define that first for those that don't quite know what that means. A transgender person, well, let's start with non-binary because it's broader. A non-binary person does not fit the traditional binary, meaning male or female. When you are non-binary, you're on a spectrum, and your gender identity, not your biological sex, but your gender identity is on a binary. So my gender identity is trans masculine. I was born biologically a female, so you'll hear the term AFAB, assigned female at birth, but my gender identity is male. I like to say I'm a non-binary transgender person. I have not gone through a transition, nor do I plan to, meaning I'm not going to take hormones or have surgery to alter the body that I was given to walk on this earth with. Had I been younger, maybe 30 years, I might have a different feeling about it. But to me, being who you are, for me, you shouldn't have to alter your physical being to reflect who you are and you walk this earth. So no amount of surgery or hormones going to change who I am as I go through the earth. So that's present day as a transgender person and doing the work that I'm doing, Naranjan, around gender inclusive language, helping companies understand what that is.
Having been challenged with all of this for most of your life and taken a very advocate role of where you are now in educating and empowering and creating a space for individuals on those platforms, the ones who know and the ones who don't know. So being that conduit, if you will, in between.
So in reflecting where I am now in my journey, it's taken me a while to realize that my gift is as an educator and making things that are quite complex, simple. Where I used to think that was not such a gift in corporate America, it turned out to be a true blessing. So being transgender and non-binary, does that define who I am? Heck no, that defines nothing. Who I am is a human on the earth trying to live my best life and be a good, giving being. Having my gender identity as non-binary and transgender doesn't define me, but it's certainly a huge part of where I am in my life. And as you mentioned, my journey from being an educator, a teacher, a guidance counselor, a principal, moving into business, going into sales for big Fortune 500 companies, making enough money to be able to start my own business and educating people. I did social media training to businesses for 14 years. And then realizing there was a bigger mission for me, which is helping to use my business savvy and my ability to train and teach and help individuals, organizations, parents, adults understand what this gender stuff is all about. And with the bottom line being to keep kids from being kicked out of the house, from being homeless, because every dollar I make goes to a local Houston, Texas organization for educating teachers and parents so that their children aren't put on the streets because of their gender identity.
In reflection, do you feel being an educator is your calling to a certain degree?
Absolutely. You know, it's funny because when I was teaching fifth grade, I would never have thought education was my calling. I always wanted to teach adults and speak, even though that was my biggest fear, as most people have a fear of public speaking. But I did some amazing work with Landmark Education. I'll give them a plug because it transformed my life. But yes, my gift is to be able to teach. And what the culmination of teaching Facebook and teaching LinkedIn, teaching social media, teaching cryptocurrency, teaching all these different things. Now I get to share who I am, and the product, if you will, is me. So how cool is that? It's taken me a long time to get to this point where I don't have a buffer between me and the world, which was LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever I was teaching. Now I'm teaching me.
And how rewarding is that? How beautiful is that to be able to really step into, this is who I am. This is what I've learned. And this is, to a certain degree, what I've come to terms with what I am and who I am. So whether you like it or you don't, not really my problem.
Yeah,
Right?
what you think of me is none of my business. That's
Absolutely.
something that, you know, and it's taken, look, everyone that's listening to this, it's not something you snap your finger and boom. It takes years and years, and realizing that what you think of me is really none of my business. And it's not about me or you for that matter. It's about your gift and what you can bring. And yes, I feel so blessed to, it's not easy, I'm going to tell you, because I get some challenging questions, particularly from parents of all things. I'll do a gig at a corporate event, and it'll always be parents that, hey, my kid is telling me they're non-binary, or they're, you know, what do I do? How do I this? So it's really interesting. But the more I've released caring about what other people think, and the more I've released what I care about, me personally making money, because as I mentioned, I do care about the money because it's going to someone other than me now.
Right.
I've watched my income just go skyrocket because it's not about me anymore. And I'm not tied into that outcome.
Isn't that the gift?
Oh, it's an amazing gift, especially being brought up in a Jewish household, money was all about money. And I was like that all of my life. It was all about money. It was all about achievements and how much this. And I'm grateful I had that, because without a good savings account, who knows if my mindset would be where it is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's also such a great opportunity when we can think of others and be of service to others on a much more grander scale. And when it comes from that place of passion and drive and determination to make a difference for the greater good and not really for the bank balance, it has a whole different energy, a whole different feel and projection to anything and everything that moves forward.
Absolutely. But again, I say that it's not easy. It's when, in my mind, it takes a long time to get there, and it does take some financial security so you don't have that pressure on your head to pay your bills. But when that light bulb moment finally happens and you start living that, I mean, I have contracts coming in that in a million years, especially at my stage of life, of human form life. It's just amazing. And sometimes I pinch myself that, how did I get so lucky at this stage of my life? And it wasn't luck. It truly was hard work and perseverance and honesty.
Yeah. So what do you feel are some of the attributes that you have obtained and honed and really garnered and polished, possibly as your mastered craft, to put you into this space of giving from a place of compassion and determination and potentially what's right in a human spiritual form?
Well, I'd say that it's funny because everybody talks about authenticity and being authentic and what's real. And the first book I wrote for social media was called Get Real, People. And we're talking 14 years ago, when you could not be not real on social media. People could see through that, through your digital body language. And then I wrote a book on digital body language. But what I'm getting to on all this is all the years I spent in corporate America, in particular, being somebody I wasn't, trying to live somebody that I wasn't. I never got good at honing that skill. So to answer your question, it was more embracing who I was and realizing that another gift is I never knew how not to be real. And that might sound kind of cliche, but it's true. And I used to get in so much trouble because I spoke my mind and I shared who I was, and I still do in some cases. But it's who I am, and trying to be something other than who you are does not work. So skills that I've honed in my when I train and teach, I can tell you I've learned that know your stuff. I'm not saying to me, being able to present something, I present it as though it's just totally natural, but it took me a lot of honing and learning that material to get it down cold. So it is just part of my being, and I can deliver it naturally and honestly. Honesty is another big one. So yeah, being true to yourself and honest. So
yeah, that's a lifelong journey, isn't it?
it is. It's taken many, many, many years to realize that, I'm okay. Everybody is born with something that they can share and they can give, and not try and be like somebody else. And in our culture in the United States and in a lot of countries, the role models are, I'm not going to say much more on that. I mean, it concerns me truly who some of our role models are out there, because it sets false expectations, and there's only one way to be, and the best way to be is be yourself.
So I completely agree. But to a certain degree, this is a narrative that's been running for decades, if not centuries, not to be yourself. This is the perfect picture of who you should look like. This is the environment, what it should look like. This is the brilliant car that you should be driving. This is the best vacation you could ever have. All these external pieces that have really been, I want to say, pressed upon us and ingrained into the core of, to a certain degree, of our being as a human. And being in a place where we're dialoguing within ourselves, fighting, I don't want to use the word fighting, but in an essence, there's a battle between our external self and the dialogue that's going on mentally to the inner self, which is the heart center, the compassion, the spirit, the soul, the essence of who we truly are, which can sometimes be in conflict of what it is, what's running through our veins is this material world and this narrative of you can't be yourself.
Yeah, I mean, even bringing gender into play on this topic, going back and growing up, we kind of never went down all the way down to when I realized my gender identity was different than my biological sex. But yeah, I mean, hey, you're grown up, you're born a girl, if you will. Here's your role as a mother, as a woman. And these are the expectations we expect of that, quote, gender role. But, you know, things are so out there now with understanding about what is gender and what is transgender and what does that mean. So much better than when I was coming up. I didn't even know what a lesbian was versus a transgender person. So yeah, there is a battle. And for me, I think, and for all of us, there gets to a point where enough is enough and you can't do it anymore. Your inner self takes over and says, and this really happened for me in corporate America. I got fired because I started speaking my mind and listening to myself versus trying to be that rock star salesperson, even though I was a rock star salesperson. And it was because I was real, but I digress. Yeah. So, you know, finally saying enough is enough and speaking your mind. And I remember I was told in corporate America, we don't pay you to think. That's what I was told by my sales manager. And I was like, wait, something's wrong with this picture because I'm a pretty good thinker. And I didn't know any of that back then. So there'll come a point where enough is enough and you'll start listening more to your inner self and realize that's the true you and that's the wisdom that will come forth and guide you, hopefully in the direction that you want to be going.
Yeah. There always is a tipping point in anybody's life, I believe, of how much the tolerance is there for any experience, be it for an employment situation or be it for a relationship, or even to the dialogue within yourself. So for instance, with your experience, with 44 years, I believe you had said before in our pre-interview conversation, of that internal dialogue going on about this is not right, it doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel right. So even that internal dialogue hits a tipping point, hits a point where going, you know what, enough is enough. I can't do this anymore. I can't be it, fake it, mask it or something, because the inner calling and spirit is so strong. It's so vibrant. I'm just waiting for some space.
Yeah, and you're right. It was at age 44, I was watching a program on the Lifetime channel, and it was about transgender folks. And after all these years of walking the earth, it was the light bulb went off. It's like, oh my gosh, all these years of knowing something's wrong here, going through my mind talk every single day. What's wrong with me? I'm not smart enough. I'm stupid. everything I had made up, and then watching that Lifetime channel program and finally realize what was, quote, wrong with me. And coming out to my family and friends was, for me, like a weight that I can't even describe off my shoulders. But my family and friends did not agree so much. So I went back in the closet for another 20 years. So truly, at age 64, I finally said, it's not about me. I don't care what you think of me. It's not about me. It's about making a difference while I can still think logically and speak. It's about making a difference. So with that, I'll say that I came out and published my fourth book, Don't Call Me Ma'am. And it told my story as a transgender person. And by the way, when I teach these companies about gender inclusive language, I always share my story, because that is the most powerful thing we have, is our story. And when you can tell your story and other people relate to it, I don't care if you relate to one person, if you make a difference with one person, that's the gift. So I said, enough is enough. I'm going to go out. I'm going to share my story. I'm going to publish my fourth book and make a difference out there.
Yeah. As, like you said, as cliche as it may sound, because anybody, and I think many people, when they take a path to be an advocate or create space for other people and wanting to make a change, even for one person, does actually make a difference. It is very empowering.
It's amazingly empowering. I mean, I'll get a call from a grandparent, and if I help no one but that grandparent help be kinder and more understanding to their grandchild, and I'll tell you, this hasn't been easy. One of my speaking engagements early on was to a university group, and in the room were many non-binary and transgender folks, and I was very new to sharing my story, and I dead named somebody. Now, I didn't even know what that term was when I did this, and let me tell you what that means. When you dead name somebody, it's when somebody declares they're transgender and states their new name and their new pronouns and how they want to be addressed. They don't want you to use their name prior to their transition, and it doesn't make you any less or more of a transgender person doing hormones, having surgery. But the bottom line, when you dead name somebody, you're using their, quote, older name before they established who they felt inside. So I dead named somebody in this event, and my community, what I thought was my community of folks, I got blackballed from future events, so I wasn't able to teach. And it was crushing. I mean, if you know me, you know that I don't have a mean bone in my body, that I would never intentionally hurt somebody. But yet to have this community turn on me like that, it made me realize I don't ever want to speak in an educational setting, even though I have 2 master's degrees. I never want to be in an educational setting. It's just not my jam. And after that brutality that I felt from that, it made me realize I just want to be with my business people. I'm a lot more comfortable with them, and they're a lot more understanding and forgiving than my own community was at that time.
That's quite an experience, but one I think that is relatively common when somebody comes out into an arena to share their own truth. And even though they might not have solid surfing legs, they are still a little shaky and they getting their feet wet. For some reason, because I've seen this myself, the community where you feel it's okay to fall and lean back and lean into, that they do have your back. For some reason, they don't. How does that fit with where you are now? And I'm trusting that you've created a community and environment that does create a soft place for people to land when they've had those experiences?
It took me a while. I mean, it probably, and I'm pretty good at letting go of stuff, realizing once again, what you think of me is none of my business. But that particular experience took me a while to come to terms with, and it's very, very assuring, Naranjan, that you had this happen to you, and you say that it's a common experience, because, I really haven't talked to too many people about that. But again, what I feel now is, do I really want to be around people that aren't forgiving? Let's start there. That aren't sympathetic, that aren't understanding? And the answer is a big no. And honestly, what I've also learned is educational institutions, universities, nonprofits, universities, where I was initially speaking, don't have any money to spend on speakers. So it was really not the right place anyway, if I'm trying to raise money for a nonprofit. So as hard as it was to be called by a lawyer from this one organization and told I was not going to be allowed to speak because I dead named somebody in my last presentation, as hard as it was, again, it was a huge gift, because it got me off of saying, hey, I'm going to speak for free anywhere that I can go and tell my story, because I'm not going to speak for free, because what I have to say is important, and the money that comes in goes to a charity that helps educate others. So
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's very courageous for you to go on that journey and speak for free, and to be able to look at the silver lining out of that experience, because there is one. There always is. It's whether we can see it or not in every single experience. So good for you for seeing that. But I do feel, I don't know how long ago that was, but fast forwarding now, is there a safe space for individuals who are oscillating with who they are, to want to step into who they feel they are? Is there a place for them to land for that when they have reached their tipping point and want to be an advocate for themselves?
Well, the answer to that, of course, is always yes. I mean, the only way we should be is we should be ourselves. And sometimes you're not going to have the support system, and your family might turn, your friends might turn. But if you have to be true to yourself. If you aren't true to yourself, you will not be a happy person. Yeah. If you're living a life of inauthenticity with yourself, how can you do that? I mean, you are how you were made, and it's who you are, and right for you. Now, I will say that if you're concerned about living your authentic self, find some groups to join before you maybe decide to make a declaration, whether it's about being a transgender, whether it's about being a lesbian, whether it's about being not interested in following a corporate path, but want to follow your artistic path. Get a group or two and make sure that you have some advocates that you can talk to, because you might find a lot of doors slammed in your face because they don't like this declaration of who you decide you're going to be true to yourself with that declaration.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of groups to find, be it on Facebook is a great place to start, professionally on LinkedIn. Yeah. So.
Yeah, there's lots of places, but I would echo that with use your own discernment and trust your own intuition and your own inner compass when you feel maybe a violation or an element of untruth that shows up for somebody else. So staying in your own truth, I don't care what it is, whether it is in regards to what we're talking about, the gender piece and the identity, or whether it's you now want to call yourself a vegan, having been raised as a carnivore. Whatever that looks like, use your discernment and use your own compass, your own truth, to be able to determine how much you want to open into that space before the pain and before the hurt can truly be penetrated to a space where it could take you back into a projection of another 20 years, like it did with you to a certain degree.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and your words are very wise. I didn't have anywhere to go, and I came out to all these folks, and I went right back in the closet because I didn't have a group to join. I mean, this was pre-Facebook and everything. So yeah, it's important to know that you do have allies that you can turn to, whether it's in a group, friends, family, before you declare whatever that truth is for you.
Absolutely. It's a journey. And what a journey it has been for you. 4 books, a hugely success. 5, I'm sorry. 5
well, that's
books.
all right. Yeah, the 5th one I'll just say was the Field Guide. It's really opened a lot of doors to Field Guide to Gender Inclusive Language, because companies are all over this right now, wanting to improve how they address all employees, and being diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging are so important right now, and should be forevermore. So
Absolutely. So 5 books, hugely successful career in so many different aspects, from education to sales to training on social media, and now being a real advocate and an ally and a speaker for those who are not comfortable with their own voice, to create a space for them. So I'm going to ask you a grand question. What's next?
Wow. That's always a good question, because I try not to project into the future. I try to stay as present as I can.
Absolutely.
The days of my making lists of what's next. But I guess I'd say I'm working on another course on allyship. So I'm kind of stuck on that. I have more than enough information to create the course, but I haven't done it. I have to usually get away. I have to go somewhere remotely where there aren't any distractions, either to the beach or to the country, but I haven't done that yet. But that's the only thing that I would say what's next for me is getting that course created and then videoed. And I work with a really, really cool company out of Dallas called Diversity Crew. And it's myself and 20 other partners that each have a specialty, like religious diversity or unconscious bias training. So I'm going to do that course, and they resell the courses. So that's all I really have. What's next for me?
Yeah, for now, because I'm sure there is lots of other magic in store, but it's going to come up as a beautiful surprise, because
I love that.
As you said, sometimes when we create the list, we limit ourselves. There's an element of control that we want to have of, wow, that's even a big goal. But when we have such a deep longing to make a change for the greater good, I think, and I truly believe, the universe presents you with opportunities that our conscious mind cannot fathom. So I'm really excited about what this next little phase is going to look like for you. So keep me posted, for sure.
I will. And I love that. And thank you for that, because you're right. It'll pop up when least expected. And as long as I don't get in the way.
Yes, absolutely. Michelle, this has been such an informative, educational, and heartfelt conversation. Thank you for sharing your experiences and all you've learned, and your intentions for moving forward and truly being who you are. So thank you.
And thank you for having me. I've totally enjoyed it.
I'm Naranjan, and you've been listening to Master of Your Crafts podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and join me next week for another episode. Thank you for listening.